The coffee shop window framed the Seattle rain like a melancholy painting, fitting for Jake Miller's mood as he stared at the business card in his weathered hands. After 30 years of self-imposed exile from his hometown, the construction company he'd built from nothing had finally landed a contract that would bring him full circle. Back to Oak Ridge. Back to her. Emma Lawson, now Emma Richardson. The name change still felt like a paper cut across his heart, even 3 decades later. Jake took another sip of his black coffee, the bitterness matching his reflections. At 54, his dark hair now carried distinguished streaks of silver, and the lines around his eyes told stories of a life lived in solitude. "Mr. Miller, your car is ready." The young assistant's voice pulled Jake from his reverie. He nodded, gathering his well-worn leather briefcase filled with blueprints for the Heritage Building restoration project that would occupy the next 6 months of his life. Across town, in a sprawling Tudor-style house, Emma Richardson stood at her kitchen island, methodically chopping vegetables with more force than necessary. 30 years of marriage to Mark had gradually transformed from youthful optimism to hollow routine. The sound of the front door closing announced her husband's arrival. "I'll be in my study. I have calls to make," Mark announced without greeting, his expensive suit still perfectly pressed despite the long day. No kiss. No question about her day. Just the usual cold distance that had become their normal. Emma sighed, pushing back a strand of honey blonde hair that had escaped her elegant twist. At 52, she remained beautiful, though sadness had etched itself permanently around her blue eyes. Her marriage had provided financial security, social standing, and a son she adored. But love had evaporated long ago like morning dew under a merciless sun. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Lily, her younger sister and confidant. "Have you heard? That old theater downtown is finally getting restored." Lily's voice bubbled with excitement. "Some big shot construction company from Seattle got the contract. Richardson Investments lost the bid." Emma's knife paused mid-chop. Mark would be furious. The theater restoration had been his pet project for months. "The owner is actually coming tomorrow for the town council meeting," Lily continued. "Some guy named Jake Miller." The knife clattered to the floor. Emma's hands trembled as she picked up the knife, memories cascading through her mind like the raindrops streaming down her kitchen window. Jake Miller, the name she had forced herself not to think about for decades, now echoed in her kitchen, bringing with it a flood of emotions she thought long buried. "Emma, are you still there?" Lily's voice crackled through the phone. "Yes," Emma managed, her voice barely a whisper. "I just dropped something. Well, anyway, I thought you'd want to know since Mark has been obsessing over that project." Lily paused. "Are you okay? You sound strange." "I'm fine." Emma lied, a skill she had perfected over the years. "I should go. Dinner." The town council meeting room buzzed with anticipation the following evening. Emma sat rigidly beside Mark, who was seething with barely contained anger. His investment firm had been certain they would secure the theater restoration contract, and the loss to an outsider had wounded his pride. This Miller character better not turn our historical landmark into some modern monstrosity, Mark muttered, his perfectly manicured fingers drumming impatiently on the armrest. "I'll be watching his every move." Emma's reply died in her throat as the back door opened and Jake Miller walked in. 3 decades had transformed the shy, poor boy into a commanding presence. His tailored suit couldn't hide the physical strength built from years of hands-on work, and the confidence in his stride spoke of a man who had built himself from nothing. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and for a moment, the world around them disappeared. Jake's step faltered almost imperceptibly before he recovered, nodding politely in her direction before continuing to the presenter's table. "Welcome, Mr. Miller," Mayor Simmons began. "We're excited to have Miller Construction taking on the restoration of our beloved Oak Ridge Theater." Jake's deep voice filled the room as he presented his vision for the theater. Emma barely heard the words, transfixed by the man he had become, the passionate gestures, the thoughtful responses to questions. This was Jake, but not the Jake she remembered. "Mr. Miller will be personally overseeing the project," the mayor announced, "and staying in town for the duration." Mark's hand suddenly closed over Emma's, his grip painfully tight. She turned to find his cold eyes fixed on her face, studying her reaction with unsettling intensity. "Do you know him?" Mark whispered, his voice deceptively casual. "We went to school together," Emma replied quietly. "A long time ago." Mark's eyes narrowed slightly. "Interesting. You never mentioned him." After the meeting, as people gathered in small groups, Jake approached them. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs as Mark straightened, extending his hand with the practiced smile he reserved for business associates. "Mark Richardson," he introduced himself. "And my wife, Emma." "Jake Miller," Jake replied, his eyes betraying nothing as they briefly met Emma's. "It's good to be back in Oak Ridge." The Richardson home buzzed with unexpected energy that Sunday afternoon. Emma arranged finger sandwiches on silver platters while her son Ben lounged on the kitchen island, scrolling through his phone. "Mom, why is this theater thing such a big deal?" the 25-year-old asked, running a hand through his unruly dark hair, so unlike Mark's meticulous appearance. "Your father had plans for that property," Emma answered carefully. Lily burst through the door, without knocking, as was her custom. "The prodigal sister arrives, and I've brought reinforcements." Behind her followed a petite young woman with intelligent eyes and a confident smile. "Noah Miller," she introduced herself. "My uncle's new in town, so Aunt Lily adopted me." Emma nearly dropped the platter. "Miller." "Jake's niece," Lily explained with a meaningful look. "She's interning at the theater project." "Isn't that wonderful?" The doorbell chimed. Mr. Roy, Jake's former teacher and mentor, now in his 80s, stood leaning on his cane beside Tom and Sam, Jake's childhood friends who'd remained in Oak Ridge. "Hope you don't mind us old-timers crashing your gathering." Mr. Roy winked. Emma's planned intimate lunch had somehow transformed into an impromptu reunion. Mark watched from the doorway, expression calculating as new guests arrived, including Ellie, widow of Jake's late friend, whose lingering touches on Jake's arm didn't escape Emma's notice. The final arrival was Maya, the local journalist covering the restoration project, whose sharp eyes missed nothing. As Jake entered last, tension crackled in the air. Mark stepped forward, smile not reaching his eyes. "Miller, perfect timing. I was just telling everyone about the structural concerns with your restoration plans." Jake's eyebrow raised slightly. "Interesting, considering I haven't shared those plans yet." Ben straightened, suddenly interested. Noah suppressed a smile. "Perhaps," Mark continued smoothly, "we should discuss them now, unless you'd prefer to keep secrets." The challenge hung in the air as every pair of eyes darted between the two men. The tension dissolved only slightly as Emma directed everyone to the sunroom for lunch. Jake and Mark maintained a careful distance, circling each other like wary predators while exchanging polite conversation. "The theater has good bones," Jake explained to the group, "but years of neglect have left it vulnerable. My priority is preserving its historical integrity." Mark's laugh was sharp, and the profit margin, naturally. Uncle Jake donated half his fee back to the restoration fund. Noah interjected, her quick defense earning a warning glance from her uncle. Maya's pen moved rapidly across her notepad. "That's quite a story. Any particular reason for your generosity, Mr. Miller?" Before Jake could answer, Mr. Roy's weathered hand settled on his shoulder. "This boy always had heart. Built my wheelchair ramp for free after my stroke 30 years ago." "Some things never change," Ellie murmured, her admiring gaze lingering on Jake. Ben studied the exchange with growing interest. "So you grew up here, Mr. Miller?" "With my parents." An uncomfortable silence descended. Tom coughed awkwardly, while Sam suddenly found his sandwich fascinating. "We were all classmates," Lily supplied, mischief dancing in her eyes. "Your mother and Jake were particularly good friends." Mark's silverware clinked sharply against his plate. "Ancient history now." Speaking of history, Noah diverted skillfully. "Mr. Roy, I'd love to hear stories about Uncle Jake's school days." As Mr. Roy launched into tales of Jake's youth, Emma escaped to the kitchen, hands trembling as she prepared coffee. Moments later, the door swung open, and Jake stood there, hesitant. "I can help," he offered quietly. "Jake, Mom." Ben appeared behind them, his curious gaze shifting between them. "Dad's looking for more ice." Over Ben's shoulder, Emma caught Mark watching from the dining room, his expression unreadable. Beside him, Maya observed everything, her journalist's instincts clearly sensing a story beneath the surface of their polite gathering. Emma's carefully constructed world was beginning to crack. Rain pattered against the theater's grand windows as Jake inspected the damaged ceiling, the beam of his flashlight cutting through decades of dust. Footsteps echoed behind him, and he turned to find Ben Richardson watching him curiously. "Mr. Miller, thought I might find you here." Jake descended the ladder, wiping his hands on his jeans. "What brings you by, Ben?" "Curiosity." The young man wandered through the ornate lobby. "I've been researching the history of this place." "And yours?" Jake stiffened. "Mine. You left town the same year my parents married. Mom gets this look whenever your name comes up." Ben's eyes, so like Emma's, held a challenge. "I'm good at connecting dots." Their conversation was interrupted by Noah bursting through the doors, rainwater dripping from her jacket. "Uncle Jake, there's a problem with the—" She stopped short. "Oh, hi, Ben." Something shifted in Ben's demeanor. "Noah, right? We didn't really talk at the lunch." "I'm supervising the historical documentation," Noah explained, her usual confidence faltering slightly under Ben's gaze. Outside, a car door slammed. Mark Richardson stalked in, Ellie following close behind. "Richardson," Jake acknowledged with forced civility. "This is a closed site." "I'm here as Ellie's real estate advisor," Mark replied smoothly. "She's considering property nearby." Ellie stepped forward. "Jake, I hope you don't mind. I wanted your professional opinion." The theater door swung open again as Lily arrived with Emma, both carrying takeout bags. "Surprise lunch for the workers," Lily announced, freezing at the tableau before her. "Oh, it's a party." Emma's eyes darted between her husband, son, and Jake. Mrs. Richardson. Maya emerged from the shadows, camera in hand. Perfect timing. I'm doing a feature on families connected to the theater's history. What history would that be? Mark asked dangerously. Mr. Roy's voice came from the theater entrance, supported by Tom and Sam. The history of secrets, Mr. Richardson. This theater has seen many. Mark's smile didn't reach his eyes. Perhaps it's time some secrets were brought to light. Jake watched Emma's face pale and knew the past they'd buried was about to resurface. The theater's old projection room offered Emma temporary sanctuary from the charged atmosphere below. Through the small window, she watched the uncomfortable gathering disperse. Mark leading Ellie outside for their property discussion. Ben and Noah huddled over architectural plans, Lily distracting Maya with theater gossip. You always did hide up here during school events. Emma, startled at Jake's voice. He stood in the doorway, 30 years older, yet somehow still the same. You remembered, she whispered. I remember everything. Emma. His voice held no accusation, just quiet truth. Footsteps on the stairs interrupted them as Mr. Roy appeared, breathing heavily from the climb. Don't mind me, the old teacher said, settling into a dusty chair. Just resting these old legs. Though I do have something you both should see. He withdrew a yellowed envelope from his pocket. Found this while cleaning out my classroom files last week. Never opened it. The envelope bore Emma's handwriting, for Jake Miller, to be delivered after graduation. Emma's hand flew to her mouth. You never gave it to him. You asked me to hold it until after graduation. Then Jake disappeared. Mr. Roy handed it to Jake. Seems 30 years late is better than never. Downstairs, Sam's voice echoed up the stairwell. Mark's looking for Emma. Mr. Roy rose with a knowing look. I'll stall him. Take your time. Alone again, Jake studied the envelope. Should I? It doesn't matter now, Emma said, turning away. It matters to me. Carefully, Jake opened the brittle paper and read silently, his expression shifting from curiosity to shock. You were pregnant. Before Emma could respond, Ben appeared at the doorway, his face pale with shock. What did you just say? Behind him stood Mark, his expression murderous, and Maya, notebook, now forgotten in her hand. I think, Mark said with deadly calm, that my wife and Mr. Miller have some explaining to do. Lily pushed through the growing crowd on the stairs. Emma, what's going on? Tom and Sam exchanged glances of dawning understanding. Noah looked from her uncle to Ben with wide eyes. Ellie stood frozen on the landing, the pain of comprehension written across her face. In the painful silence, Mr. Roy spoke gently. Every story deserves to be told in its proper time. And that time is now, Mark declared, eyes fixed on Emma. Tell them, or I will. Ben is not your son, Jake. Emma's words sliced through the suffocating silence. Her hands trembled, but her voice remained steady as she continued. I lost our baby 3 months after you left town, Mark, and I married the following year. Ben staggered backward, as if physically struck. You lied to me my entire life. The truth is worse than you imagine, Mark interjected, his composure cracking. Tell them the rest, Emma. Tell them why I've endured this charade for 25 years. Emma's eyes widened. Mark, please. Your mother made a deal. Mark turned to Ben, each word precisely chosen to wound. Her family's business was failing. My investment saved them from bankruptcy, on one condition. You purchased her, Jake whispered, understanding dawning horrifically. I made a business arrangement, Mark corrected coldly. One she's violated emotionally, if not physically, every day since. Lily lunged forward, only Sam's quick reflexes preventing her from striking Mark. You manipulative bastard. Maya's pen hovered, torn between journalistic instinct and human decency. Ellie pressed a hand to her mouth, tears streaming silently. I knew something was missing in our family. Ben's voice cracked. I just never understood. What? Thunder rumbled overhead as rain lashed the theater's windows. The aging building seemed to groan in sympathy with the human drama unfolding within its walls. There's more, Mr. Roy said quietly, retrieving an old newspaper from his satchel. The theater wasn't awarded to Jake's company by chance. The headline read, Anonymous Donor Saves Historic Theater, Stipulates Restoration by Miller Construction. All eyes turned to Mark, whose composed mask finally shattered completely. You orchestrated this, Emma realized, pieces falling into place. You brought Jake back deliberately. I wanted to see if your precious love story would reignite, Mark hissed. I wanted proof before I destroyed you both. Noah stepped protectively closer to Ben, whose world was imploding before his eyes. 30 years, Jake spoke finally, voice heavy with regret. 30 years wasted because of pride, fear, and manipulation. Not wasted, Tom interjected unexpectedly. They were preparing you both for this moment. Lightning flashed, illuminating the tear-streaked faces of everyone present, each person irrevocably changed by the cascade of revelations. The storm outside intensified, but the tempest within the theater grew eerily quiet as Mark straightened his tie with practiced precision. You've had your dramatic moment, he announced. Now for the business at hand. I want a divorce, Emma, on my terms. And as for this theater project, he turned to Jake, I'll ensure every permit is revoked by morning. You're done controlling people, Mark. The voice belonged to Ben, who stepped forward, shoulders squared. I found your hidden files last month, the offshore accounts, the blackmail material, everything. Mark's composure faltered. You're bluffing. Am I? Ben withdrew a flash drive from his pocket. I gave copies to Mr. Roy for safekeeping. The elderly teacher nodded confirmation, his eyes twinkling with unexpected mischief. Insurance, Mark. Something you understand. Maya stepped forward, professionalism overriding reluctance. Financial crimes make excellent headlines, Mr. Richardson. You wouldn't dare, Mark snarled. I would, Ben countered. Unless you walk away cleanly from the theater, from Mom, from all of us. Ellie moved beside Jake, her hand finding his arm. Jake, we should talk privately about all this. Noah interceded smoothly. Actually, Ellie, I need your real estate expertise for the community outreach program. She guided the reluctant woman away from her uncle with gentle determination. Tom and Sam positioned themselves strategically between Mark and the others, their message wordless but clear. 30 years of marriage, Emma whispered, and I never truly knew you, Mark. You never tried, he replied bitterly. Your heart was buried in this theater with your memories of him. Lily wrapped a protective arm around her sister. Emma deserved happiness you could never give her. Mark's laugh was hollow. And you think he can? He gestured dismissively at Jake. The boy who ran away instead of fighting for her. I didn't know about the baby, Jake said quietly. I thought she chose you freely. Would it have mattered? Mark challenged. You were nothing, penniless, uneducated, ambitious, but powerless. Perhaps then, Mr. Roy interjected. But look at the man standing before you now, Mark. One who built himself without destroying others. The building suddenly creaked ominously overhead. Jake's experienced, I caught the danger immediately. Everyone out, he commanded. Water damage has compromised the ceiling. As they rushed toward the exits, a massive section of plaster collapsed, separating the group. Through the billowing dust, Jake found himself cut off with Mark, debris blocking their escape route. Jake, Mark. Emma's panicked voice carried through the dust-filled air. The theater's partial collapse had created a dangerous maze of debris. We're alive, Jake called back, assessing their situation. A support beam blocked the main exit, trapping him and Mark in the theater's west wing. Stay back. Structures unstable. Outside, Ben organized the others with surprising authority. Noah, call emergency services. Lily, keep Mom calm. Mr. Roy, what's the fastest alternative entrance? The old stage door, the teacher replied without hesitation. Tom, Sam, you remember the way. Inside, Mark brushed plaster dust from his designer suit, eyes calculating as Jake examined the blocked passage. Quite the hero, aren't you? Always ready to save the day. Save your breath, Jake muttered, testing a beam's stability. We need to work together to get out. Mark's laugh was brittle. She never stopped loving you. You know, I saw it in her eyes every day for 30 years. Jake paused, fighting conflicting emotions. This isn't the time. When better? Mark challenged. We might die here. We're not dying today, Jake insisted, locating a narrow opening. Follow me and stay close. In the alley behind the theater, Ellie surprised everyone by taking charge of the arriving first responders, her composed grief channeled into purposeful action. The building's historical blueprints are in my car. I've been researching the neighborhood for months. Maya put away her reporter's notebook, instead helping direct traffic away from the emergency scene. Some stories matter more than headlines. Through a gap in the emergency vehicles, Emma caught a glimpse of a shadowy figure slipping into the cordoned theater through an unguarded side entrance. Someone's going in, she gasped. Ben followed her gaze, recognizing the silhouette instantly. It's Noah, he shouted, breaking into a run despite Lily's attempt to hold him back. Inside the crumbling structure, Jake and Mark had reached a partially collapsed stairwell when a familiar voice called from above. Uncle Jake, there's a clear path through the projection booth. Noah. Jake's fear was palpable. Get out of here, now. Not without you, she replied stubbornly, the family resemblance never stronger. A secondary collapse sent dust billowing through the stairwell. When it cleared, Mark stood frozen, staring at where Noah had been standing seconds before. She saved me, he whispered, the young woman's quick reflexes having pushed him from danger's path. Why would she do that? Before Jake could answer, Ben appeared at the top of the stairs, terror and determination etched on his face as he reached for Noah's outstretched hand. 1 year later, the restored Oak Ridge Theater gleamed in the summer sunlight, its marquee announcing the grand reopening gala. Citizens gathered on the red carpet, admiring the seamless blend of historical preservation and modern craftsmanship. Emma stood beside Jake, her fingers lightly entwined with his. At 53, she had discovered that freedom suited her, freedom from lies, from pretense, from a marriage that had been a gilded cage. "Ready?" Jake asked softly, the past year having gently rekindled what 3 decades couldn't extinguish. "Almost." Emma smiled as Ben and Noah approached, their hands clasped with the easy confidence of new love. "The documentary crew is all set up," Noah announced. "Maya says they want to interview the hero contractor and his team first." Ben laughed. "Still can't believe Mom's dating a celebrity." Mr. Roy joined them, leaning on his cane. The past has a way of finding itself right in the end. Inside, Tom and Sam supervised last-minute details, while Lily entertained benefactors with animated stories. The theater rescue had made national news, not for scandal, but for heroism. Mark's selfless actions during the collapse had shocked everyone, including himself. "He's arriving," Ben murmured, spotting the familiar figure approaching. Mark Richardson looked different. Humbler somehow, the sharp edges softened. The collapse had changed him. He nodded politely to the group, his eyes lingering momentarily on Emma, with something like regret before he moved inside. Ellie appeared at Jake's side. The Historical Society is impressed. Her initial heartbreak had transformed into genuine friendship. "You've preserved more than just a building." As the guests filed into the theater, Jake held Emma back for a moment. "I have something for you." He pressed a faded envelope into her palm, her long-ago letter, now joined by a new one. "Some words are worth waiting for." Emma's eyes welled with tears as she recognized his handwriting. For Emma, the beginning. The theater lights dimmed as they took their seats, the restored projector illuminating the screen with their town's history, past, and present intertwined. Somewhere in the darkened balcony, Maya's pen hovered over her notebook. The story of Jake and Emma had ended her cynicism about second chances, but something in Mark's expression as he'd entered suggested that perhaps their tale wasn't quite finished after all.